Hey everybody, this is Jeff Ameriine, founder and managing director of Startup Junkie. Startup Junkie is an entrepreneurial support organization. We're here to provide free services. We run accelerators. If you want to learn more about what we can do for you, check us out at startupjunkie.org.
Welcome to another episode of the Startup Junkies podcast. My name is Caleb, joined by my Startup Junkie co-hosts, Jeff and Harrison. How's it going, guys?
Going great. Glad to be here today.
Thank you.
This is, we do virtual podcasts, but this one's uniquely virtual because we're not, on the other side of the room or in our other offices. We're actually spread out across the country right now, actually. But we're joined today by our new friend, Jeffrey Feldberg. Jeffrey is the co-founder, serial entrepreneur, co-founder of Deep Wealth. We're going to dive into that, all that he's got to share with us today. Jeffrey, how's it going?
Hey, so good to be here. Thank you for having me, and really excited about both what you guys are doing, the entrepreneurial journey, how you're really all making a difference out there. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about Deep Wealth and what you're working on now. What is the shiny object that you are, devoting your time to these days?
Well, for Deep Wealth, why don't we do something a little bit different? Why don't we go to the story behind the story, which I think is far more interesting, and there's a lot of nuggets in there and learning insights for everyone on an entrepreneurial journey, whether you're in startup mode or you've been out there for a few years or maybe even a few decades. Would love to share that. And just to set this up, it was a dark, rainy, stormy night. No, it wasn't. But back in the day, growing up as really a kid and teenager, and later on into young adulthood, serial entrepreneur, knew I wanted to be a business owner. And I just knew when I had that first opportunity, I would do that. And so after my MBA program, I started my own e-learning company at the time. And just to set things up, it was 1996. So the internet was brand spanking new for most people. When you spoke of the web, you thought of a spider's web, not the web that we know and love today. And it was working with institutions like Vanderbilt University, Boston University, to help them take their degree programs online and to also really focus on the working professionals. But before we got there, so when I first started, I was out of my parents' attic. I had no money, no experience, no team. I was watching all my friends out of school sign these very lucrative corporate contracts and doing all the wonderful things that you do in the corporate arena. And here's Jeffrey in his parents' attic, literally failing forward. But my one saving grace was I just kept at it long enough. I was passionate about it that eventually the company became successful. That's a whole other episode in and of itself. But when the company became successful, we then got on the radar of different companies, and we had that proverbial knock at the door. It was actually from a Fortune 10 company, very well known, and a very already long story short, they gave a 7-figure offer. Friends and family really excited. Jeffrey, look, you can move out of your parents' attic. It was worth the effort. But to everyone's surprise, I said no to the offer. I knew within that, hey, we're better than this. There's some value, and I'm going to figure out that value, that we're going to take that to market at one point, knowing that there's no guarantee with it, but let's figure out what we can do. So for the next short while, I was flying all across the country, meeting with investment bankers, with entrepreneurs who really won big in their exits, who lost big in their exits, with M&A lawyers, a whole cast of characters. And I put together really this crazy system. But it was for myself, my business partners, we understood it. And less than 24 months later, we said yes to a 9-figure exit deal. And that's really where the story should have ended. And I was just so naive coming out of this. I mean, this was my first company. This was my first time doing an M&A transaction or a liquidity event, as I now call that. And in my naive mind, in my naivete, I thought, okay, we were the exception to the rule. Who would want to come in and really shortchange an entrepreneur who's put the proverbial blood, sweat, and tears into the company, hire people in the community, make a painful problem go away? Who would want to shortchange that company? We must just be the exception to the rule. But when word got out, other entrepreneurs started to call in, and I realized, hey, we weren't the exception. We were the rule. That more times than not, as entrepreneurs, we don't know what we don't know. How do you master a game that you've never done before, you've never played before, and we are failing at it? The skills that build a business are different from the ones that grow it or start it in the first place. And they're certainly different than the ones that have a liquidity event, whether you're raising capital or you're going to be having your exit. And we were very fortunate. I mean, just think of this for a second. 7 figures and 9 figures. It was the exact same company. So within those, I'm rounding up a little bit. It wasn't quite the 24 months, but let's just make it 24 months. It's a round number. We weren't buying companies. Our growth was relatively the same year over year. I mean, it's all really good and we're very profitable, all those things, but nothing really changed other than how we showed up from the system that I was able to create and how we can now speak the language, share the narratives, and really show the world why we're different than everyone else and why you can't put a company like ours, Embenet, into the same category as everyone else. And so same company, same everything else. It was a different preparation process that went through it. And to me, that was eye-opening in having these conversations and really seeing what was out there. It actually got me frustrated when people said, well, can you refer me to your system? Can you give me your playbook? Give me your strategies. And guys, it was chicken scratch. It was in my head. It was on notes of paper. I knew it. My business partners knew it, but it wasn't anything formal. So I looked around, and believe me, there's lots of, and I'm using air quotes here, solutions. They're very expensive. They're usually from those that have never done it before. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, here's just another opportunity where as entrepreneurs, we're getting ripped off again. So really out of frustration, and there's a lot of reluctance. I came out of semi-retirement, if you will, to take the system that we created for ourselves and now make it available to other entrepreneurs with some big exceptions. All the things that didn't work, we reverse engineered them, put them back in of what does work. And we took what did work and made it even better to really give us as the entrepreneurs, not to level the playing field, but to tilt the playing field. So I'm going to pause it there. I mean, there's lots of different talking points there, but what I would share is that it's really true. The value and the beauty, it's in the eye of the beholder. But as entrepreneurs, it's up to us to know what to say, what to do, what not to do, quite frankly, and how to prepare for that. And no one really talks about that. No one really prepares for that.
It's really, I mean, it's really a compelling story, and it's amazing that you've created this system. But as I listen to you talk, and I think about my own experience over 9 ventures and the reflection on the fact that timing is really important for an entrepreneur, understanding when to get in, when to get out, and market opportunities and all that. How often, when you have clients today, do you end up advising them now really is the right time? Take that 7-digit offer because the market's changing, the circumstances are changing. Are there ever instances where you get a client in a situation, and rather than having them continue on, you say, no, I mean, it kind of looks like this is the right time to take that good but maybe not great offer? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, it is a great question. And with every client, we have that conversation. And to make it personal, just going back to my situation, and the short answer, Jeff, to your wonderful question, there is no right or wrong answer. It's really what makes sense for you. And the one piece of advice that we give is you can never look back because the market is always right. I can go today and I'll get one value. I can go tomorrow. It could be higher. It could be lower. It could be no value. So I can't look back. I need to have that peace within myself. Hey, I made the best decision at that time with what I had because we never know what tomorrow brings. If you go back to my exit, 2 weeks later, I'm going to date myself a little bit here, but 2 weeks later was the Great Recession. And I spoke to the buyer and they financed the purchase through bonds. And I asked the buyer, would you in this environment have gone through with a deal? And the answer was no. If it was the environment right now, we would not have even gone into the process. If we would have been in there and it was closing time, we probably would have defaulted, paid whatever penalties, because it would have been less money than what it would cost us to go through with the deal. So you never know what tomorrow is going to bring. And a quick story for you, Jeff, on that. We had an entrepreneur who came with an 8-figure offer, not a 7-figure offer. This is a few years ago. And he said, guys, what should I do? I said, well, take the offer. We're not going to sit here and tell you not to take it. Could we help you? Yes, we probably could help you, but we're not going to make any guarantees. You can work with us, then learn our system, go back to market. You may not get any deal. You might get a 7-figure offer. You might be worse off than where you are. So really think hard about where you want to be and what you want to do. And he did come back and say, you know what? I'm going to put it off to the side. Let me go through the program. He did that. And it's a success story, which you can't guarantee that for everyone. But in his case, he kept around 40% of the company. He got a 9-figure exit. The second exit, things go well, maybe even bigger than the first, and it could even get up into the 10 figures when all is said and done. So it's an example of you got to be comfortable, and this individual is very comfortable. Okay, you know what? If it doesn't pan through, I'm really good with my company. I can continue to run it. Not necessarily what I wanted, but I'm comfortable to run it until there's a better time, because I know I can control when I go to market, but I can't control the market.
Oh, that's great advice. And one more kind of follow up, and I'm going to let Caleb and Harrison get a shot at this, but it's something that constantly comes up. A lot of times in the venture process, you'll get an offer and it will be an all stock offer or a mix of stock and cash. Or, if you're real lucky, maybe it's cash, but there's an earnout. Give me your take on when you would advise a client to say, an all stock offer probably makes sense in this case, or definitely ask for some cash, or don't take any stock, take cash. I know that's a frequent thing, and I've seen that go horribly wrong in some instances where the acquiring company ends up driving the combined thing into the ground, and that otherwise good piece that they acquired is worth nothing at that point because the acquiring management didn't do a great job, and therefore the shareholders really didn't get anything out of it because they were betting on that combined stock rather than putting cash in their pocket at the time of the transaction. Talk about that a little bit.
Love these questions. Is another great question. And so in that instance, and we went through this ourselves, and it's also baked into the system, as entrepreneurs, we can't point the finger at anyone. When we point the finger at someone else, we have 3 or 4 fingers pointing back at us. And so we have to be the ones that are going to do a very deep dive, do the due diligence on the other party. So if it's Startup Junkies as an example, okay, terrific reputation. I've spoken to their companies. They have a wonderful culture. Yeah, they're not perfect. They have a few warts here and there, but they say what they do what they say, and I can take that at face value. Terrific. I've done my diligence. In our case, as an example, when it came down to the top 3, I'm not going to name any names here, we did that deep dive. We really got in behind the scenes, and we got to know the ins and outs of all the different parties. And this way we could prepare ourselves. You know what? We're not prepared to go in this direction. And in fact, we sat down with the investment banker and said, okay, for this party here, this is a no-fly zone. This is not happening. If they want to move forward, it cannot be with this, because we knew in that particular situation what it was like and what could happen. Or with this other party here, same kind of thing. So it was eyes wide open walking in there to do what we want to do. And in fact, step 3 of our 9-step process, future buyer, that's one of the things that we're doing. We're doing a deep dive on what's in there. So it's a long-winded answer to a very elegant question. Again, it comes back to there's no right or wrong answer. What's your risk tolerance like? Do you have a comfort level that, hey, if I take all stock, I know this company's track record and there's no guarantees, but there's a better to good likelihood I'll be better off with the all stock when all is said and done. And I don't need the money right now, that I can do that. Or, hey, you know what? Things are a little bit tight right now. I hear you on the all stock. I do need some cash. So let's talk about some kind of a hybrid. So it really depends on what's going to really work for something. Are you going to be sleeping like a baby at night, as the saying goes? Or are you going to be up at nights worrying about it? We definitely don't want to be up at nights worrying about it. And we can't look back either with the decision that we make. Do the diligence, make the decision, and then move forward with the best of intentions.
Oh, that's great.
I guess it's kind of a follow-up question. I want to know, how does your 9-step system kind of make room for giving advice to individual entrepreneurs, kind of when their needs might be different, like the person behind the business, I suppose. So does it offer varying advice for a 19-year-old who's getting into the business, might have broken out lucky and is looking to maybe sell, or a 65-year-old owner who potentially wants to settle down and retire and that kind of thing? How does your advice differ for the different people behind the businesses?
Well, it's very clear these questions. I am not the smartest one in the room, and I'm very happy to say that. Another terrific question. It's something that we really took to heart when we put everything together. So for starters, Harrison, we are one of the only systems, or maybe the only system that I know of out there, that's actually based on a 9-figure exit deal. And what people say is impossible, of why our system isn't going to work, is exactly why it does work. We are, number one, industry agnostic. We have from the trenches strategies that work across different industries. And that's why, in part, the system works. The other part of it, and some people don't want to hear this, if someone's looking to your point, Harrison, if they're looking for that magic pill that they can take, that magic bullet that I take this today and tomorrow I'm just off into the sunset and I've achieved everything, we're not the way to go. Because what the system does, it asks the right questions. It gives you the right strategies that you then apply very specifically to your situation. So we've had, as an example, a SaaS-based company and a manufacturing-based company going through together at the same time in the same cohort. They're having the same strategies, asking the same questions. They get to very different places because the way that we structure it, it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's, okay, where am I now? How does this fit into where we are? And as a specific example, Harrison, let's go to step one, big picture. So in step one, big picture, we're asking the question, what's maybe around the corner, over the bend? It's an inflection point. It's very small right now. People really aren't talking a lot about it, but if left unchecked, if ignored, it can put you out of business. What could that be? I'm going to come up with a list of them. Now, which of those can we solve as a company? Maybe we're not even in that area today, but we could be. Go to market, solve that problem. If we're fortunate, create a market disruption, take the company to the next level. So it's strategies like that that can really make a difference. And as we talk here today, artificial intelligence, that's an obvious one. 10 years ago, it wasn't. 5 years ago, it wasn't. Even 3 years ago, it really wasn't. But the companies that hopped onto that, leveraged that, stayed with that, they're the better for it.
So a big part of Startup Junkie is our events. We had over 200 events last year in 2023, ranging from pitch competitions to networking opportunities to educational workshops. And these are always free for everyone to attend. They support entrepreneurs here in Northwest Arkansas, and we want to see you at Startup Junkie events. To learn more or sign up, visit startupjunkie.org.
And what role does, as you're talk about the difference between building a business and then preparing it for exit, what role does team building and kind of culture setting, knowing that your goal is to exit, what role does that play?
That question, Caleb, I can easily just put that back to the Startup Junkies team, because I know you're asking that question each and every time, and you can school me and correct me on this. What I would say to that, by the way, that's step 2 X factors in what we do, because culture and the leadership team, that's a foundational X factor. That's what separates our company from the competition. And I don't want to put words in your mouth. I would suspect you would likely agree, when you're looking at a company that you're going to invest in, you don't want another full-time job. You don't want to have to worry that, okay, we're going to invest in this company, the founder's no longer going to be there, whole thing blows up, and now we have to take this thing from day to day. And so, does the company run without the founder? Is there a capable and competent leadership team there that can run the company, maybe even better, as they should, than the founder, the business owner, that can really make the difference day in, day out? And that is instrumental. Quite openly, that was one of our Achilles heel, one of our weak spots for my e-learning company, Embanet. We learned that lesson, but we learned it a little bit too late. And we are still in the process. We had a whole leadership team, and they just didn't have the track record. Incredibly talented, amazing individuals, far better than us. One of the critiques, and all of the prospective buyers and investors at the time were right. Hey guys, this is a great team, but they don't really have that 3-year track record that we really like to see, to know day in, day out that they can be consistent. So having that leadership team, having that culture is everything. And if you don't have that, stop, don't pass go, fix that before you think about doing anything else.
And the team is such a big part of any acquisition evaluation, or for that matter, from a venture capital standpoint. Any evaluation you go through in diligence is all about, can this team execute? Are there execution risks there? It's kind of, people will ask me, what are the top 3 things you look for? And I say the management team, the management team, the management team, and then everything else. And it's really kind of true. So that's a really, I think, kind of a salient point. But what comes next from your standpoint? So you've got these pieces pulled together. It's a 9-step process. What's the vision for Deep Wealth? Talk about the dent in the universe that you're trying to create.
Yeah, what gets me out of bed? Look, I am very fortunate. I have freedom of time. I have freedom of finances. I can do what I want to do when I want to do it. But what gets me out of bed, and I'm back in startup mode, if you will, in many ways with this, the vision, my rocket fuel, is to literally change the social fabric of society, one entrepreneur at a time, one exit or liquidity event at a time. And so if we fast forward, if I can be so brash or so bullish to say, hey, the system can make you richer. Okay, that's great on the surface. you'll have a larger, more successful liquidity event or exit or capital raise. You're not going to be the 90% of exits or liquidity events that fail. You're going to be in that very prestigious 10% or lower club that actually succeeds and crosses the line. We have more robust companies now. We're hiring more. We're really improving our communities. But then from the ownership level, hopefully you have done so well, you can't spend it all. And while we can't control this, we are very quick to encourage people, hey, find a cause, a social cause that's really important to you. Maybe it's setting up a foundation, or maybe it's finding an existing charity or organization where you can be on the board or even contribute to that and make a dent in that. And if you can imagine, if we can just do that one entrepreneur, one exit or liquidity event at a time, what a difference that's going to make in the social fabric of our country and, dare I say, the world. So that's really big picture wise where we want to take this, to really give people that information. Again, you can't win at a game you've never played before. And you don't want to be the guinea pig on yourself when it comes to your company, because statistics tell us it's very unlikely that the next one is going to be as successful as this one. If you're fortunate to have a successful company, we've got to make it count. So let's give you the playbook, if you will, to really know what to do, what not to do, and when to do it, to get you out there and to increase the likelihood of success, whether it's having your team come in and invest from a venture capital side of things, whether it's going out to have some kind of an exit for you, or everything else in between.
Yeah, we're fans of that kind of virtuous cycle that you described there. And I think of it as a virtuous cycle, in that you have successful founders. They know what a slog it was, what they had to go through. They have a good exit. They don't just take their chips and buy an island or move away. They're either reinvesting time or money or both into those that are coming behind them. And that virtuous cycle continues, right? Sometimes it's very difficult if you have a World Series year or a Hall of Fame year, that you're going to do that every year. It's not likely as a serial entrepreneur, but you get to relive some of that vicariously by doing the good works around other entrepreneurs that are following behind you. And inevitably, some of them end up experiencing that kind of growth and success, and then the cycle continues. So I think it's one of the things that is not talked about nearly enough. A lot of times we think somehow government is going to parachute in and solve all these problems, and they seldom do. But entrepreneurs oftentimes do, especially when there's this virtuous cycle that continues, that flywheel continues of passing these sort of good works along. And I think your system can be a critical component to that. People understanding how to do it well, and then what to do afterwards once you have the success.
Absolutely. And two quick stories or points to what you just shared, Jeff, which is so on point with that entrepreneur that I mentioned who came to us with the 8-figure offer a few years ago, and just a few months back accepted that 9-figure exit. So he said, look, I'm going to do the second kick at the can, but once that's done, I have now been through this. I may want to start up my own VC fund and help other entrepreneurs and do some startups and get them going to where they're going. And in addition to that, what that's meant for his team, how that's enriched them literally and figuratively, in every which way. And even on my own exit, people ask me, hey, Jeffrey, what was your favorite part of the exit? And again, it's going to sound a little bit corny, but this really moved the dial for me. It wasn't all the zeros, which was obviously very important of what was there. What I remember the most, it wasn't when the deal closed itself. It wasn't the whole process of everything else. And hey, we did it. We got this win. It was afterwards when we called select team members in. And it didn't matter if they were there for a year or 10 years. They just made big contributions to the company. And we gave them a success fee. We, of course, had cleared this ahead of time with the new owner. So there's no interruptions or people weren't going to be, caught off guard. But when we gave those checks to the people, they didn't expect. The tears were flowing, and it was just so heartfelt. And then seeing what they did with that, they could do whatever they wanted with that. Some started their own charities. Some went on to do their own businesses, but it was a life-changing event. Others just paid off the mortgage, and now they had peace of mind with that. But just giving that back to the team and being a part of that, that is the most memorable part of the exit, of just sharing that and paying it forward literally with the team. That makes it all so rewarding. And you're right, because the media portrays this, oh yeah, look, here's another entrepreneur riding off into the sun in a private jet off to the private island. And you never really hear what actually happens, which is quite the opposite.
Yeah, to your point, just to further that point, I think it was, and I may be getting his first name wrong, but a relatively famous Silicon Valley entrepreneur named Steve Kaplan, and he was speaking out at Stanford, and he said, equity and options, and you could even say gain share, are kind of like manure. You pile it up in one place, it just stinks. But if you spread it around, beautiful things will grow. And the whole point was, when the founders that are thought of the best and have the biggest impact are not the ones that had all the equity and all the gain share, the profit share or whatever to themselves, but the ones that figured out how to reward those key employees. And I've seen that happen. There was a company here that had a recapitalization. It was a software development agency, and it was a major recapitalization, a high valuation. They sold about 60% of the company. And that transaction created 13 new millionaires, many of which had not had a lot of money. A lot of them were sort of developers that had worked well below market wages. And then when that happened, that was catalytic in that group of 13 starting a whole bunch of new stuff around the area that then, goes to the next level of creating this sort of ecosystem where success has been recognized and it's been built upon rather than just piled all up on one person or one set of founders. So it's a great story that you tell there. It's really good.
It's all about the team. And if there's anything that I hope we have finally begun to see, because it's always been there, as we look forward, we're coming off the election. I don't want to date this podcast too much, but it's very clear that when the government steps in, it just doesn't work. It creates massive problems. It always has been and always will be small business. That's what's really putting people into employment, solving those painful problems, making a difference in the local community. And the more that we can foster that kind of entrepreneurship, the better off society will be. Look, capitalism is far from perfect. It's the best system around, though, relative to all the others. And we need to really cherish that and make the most of it.
No, I couldn't agree more. We oftentimes cite the statistics that say something like 85% of all net new jobs in the last 25 years have come from startups and small business. 99% of all employers in the US are small business, and 50% of all employees are tied to small business. So it's critical. I mean, it's critical that it's managed well, and it's a difficult process. And if you can improve their 1 year to 5 year survival rate, and then if you can help them through your system to get to a good exit, if an exit makes sense, then all the better, because it's catalytic to all the good things that can come next.
And the nice thing about that, Jeff, I agree with everything that you've said. The one thing I'll add, we've had entrepreneurs come through, hey, we're not going to have an exit. This is going to be a multi-generational business, but I want to exit my business. When I hand it off to the next generation, I want them to have a business. I want them to have a fighting chance. I want them to do better than what I did. I don't want them to have to slog through what I went through. Yeah, they'll have their own issues. They're going to have to slog through other kinds of things, but I want to really hand it off on a winning note, on an up note, not a down one. And so whether it's multi-generational, whether you're going to be bringing in outside investors, whether you're going to be exiting, there's a role to play of let's get the business in top shape. And don't hold me exactly to these stats, but it's something around, even if you've been in business 12 to 15 years, which most people say, well, okay, you're set for life. Actually, you're not. 75% failure rate. So when you think about that, that's huge. And if I drank from the Kool-Aid, as you can tell, but if you go to step 4, our due diligence, this is where we do an internal audit on ourselves. Forget a liquidity event. Forget a multi-generational handover. Hey, if we've got those hidden skeletons in the closet that are slowing down growth, holding back profits, or could literally put us out of business, nothing else really matters. And so let's get to that now, figure that out so we can accelerate our growth, our success, and as best we can, remove any of those obstacles that could have us in business today, but put us out of business tomorrow.
Great stuff. Guys, jump in. Don't let me, I could have this conversation all afternoon, but get an oar in the water, Harrison.
Yeah. The way we kind of like to end the podcast. Do you think we're ready for ending the podcast?
Sure, you can land the plane. Let's land the plane.
Land the plane question. If you had a time machine, you can travel back to give some advice to your younger self. What would that advice be?
Love that question. As Jeff, asked a very similar question on my podcast, the Deep Podcast. And to me, and it's actually a common theme, what I'm going to share that I've seen with successful people like yourself, Jeff, and others that have gone through the podcast as well. And that is, when I first started my entrepreneurial journey, I wasn't smart enough to realize that it's the journey that's everything, not the end goal. And I remember looking back saying, okay, when we get to our 1,000th student or enrollment, I'll be happy. Well, that was coming up. Okay, our 5,000, then that was coming up. Okay, our 10,000, our 100,000, then to the million, then beyond. And I realized, hey, this is a never ending. It's always going to be something bigger that you can put your eyesight on and go towards. Somewhere through, though, I realized, hey, it's not about that. And it's not about the zeros in the bank, although money is a great lubricant and it can help and all those other kinds of things. It's right now. It's not yesterday. It's not tomorrow. It's my journey right now. Who's in my life? What am I doing? Can I enjoy that? And it's easy for me to say now because I can look back and I was very fortunate and I had some success. But guys, I can assure you, as I often joke, but it's not a joke, if I had $1 for every mistake I made, I would not have needed my 9-figure exit. I would have been far wealthier beyond that. But it was that journey that really put me under the pressure that I needed to become a better leader, a better entrepreneur. And I'm far from perfect, still making mistakes. My success was there. I wasn't ready for it. So I would distill that into just a few words. Enjoy the journey. It's all we have. Nobody knows. Forget what tomorrow's going to bring. We don't know what the rest of the day is going to bring. Enjoy the moment. Look around. Embrace the people that are in your life. And if you can't embrace people that are in your life, that's a sign. That's a message. Find some other people. Enjoy the journey to really optimize it to support you, your ideals, your values, and ultimately your big picture success. Because when you're successful, when really we're looking after ourselves, we can then look after everyone else around us, our team, our family, our loved ones, but it has to start with us.
And I've got the final question. I'm curious to know from a standpoint of motivation, is it more inspiring to work your way out of your parents' attic or your parents' basement?
Yeah, that's a toss up there. That's a good one.
Our actual final question is where, for our listeners, how can they get in touch, learn more about what you're working on, connect with you, just connect with the material?
Absolutely. Let's make it really easy. Just send us a plain old email, success@deepwealth.com, success@deepwealth.com. So success@deepwealth.com. That gets to me, myself, the team. We will get back to you and we'll be the first ones to tell you, hey, we're really not the ones that can help you. Or, hey, you know what? Here's a few things. Why don't you take a look at this? This could really help you.
Awesome.
Thanks for
so
coming
much.
on. Yeah, it was fantastic. Always good chatting with you, Jeffrey, and best of luck in all that comes next. We've appreciated learning more about your journey today.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you all for what you're doing and really making a difference out there in the entrepreneurial community. Really appreciate that. God bless you all.
If you would like to get your business in front of the Startup Junkies audience, sponsor the show. If you'd like to learn more about sponsoring the Startup Junkies podcast, email us at team@startupjunkie.org.